Welcome back to another Goosebumps episode review. If you're new here, I've been doing an episode review on Goosebumps episodes, so feel free to watch my previous videos or playlists. In this video, I'll be reviewing episode 4, The Girl Who Cried Monster, which is based on Goosebumps book number 8, so let's get into it. This episode originally aired on November 11th, 1995, and was again directed by John Bell, who's directed episodes of The New Addams Family, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show, The Famous Jet Jackson, and Erie, Indiana, The Other Dimension. The episode starts off with Lucy Dark, who was played by Deborah Scorzone, who pretty much just did this episode of Goosebumps, telling us she loves to scare her little brother, saying she tells him scary stories about monsters until he begs her to stop, and she always messes with him by pretending to see monsters everywhere, and she guesses that's why no one believed her the day she saw a real monster. Her brother was played by Brandon Bone, who's known for The Hidden Room, Escape, Human Cargo, and Judgment Day, the Ellie Nestor story. Randy searches for his ball in the flowers with his foot.
Randy! Haven't you ever heard of the razor-toothed toe biter?
What do you mean, toe biter?
It got Becky and Lila next door while they're playing in their wading pool.
Couldn't they see it coming?
Toe biter can camouflage itself as anything, even water.
You're lying!
Ask Becky to take off her shoe. She'll show you. Ask her.
Then Lucy sticks her foot in the flowers.
Ah! Ah! Get away!
Randy takes off screaming into the house to tell his mom, who was played by Lynn Cormack, who's known for Beauty and the Beast, Bitten, Mutant X, and Erie, Indiana, The Other Dimension.
Lucy, would you please stop scaring your little brother?
Oh, Mom, it was just a joke.
How did all your toes grow back?
Haven't I asked you not to tell him monster stories?
Actually, the toe biter gave me back my toes because I promised to cut yours off and give them to him tonight.
No!
Their mom tells Lucy to go to the library and bug Mr. Morton instead. It cuts to Lucy returning her book back to the library when we are introduced to Mr. Morton, who was played by Eugene Lipinski, who's known for Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, Harriet the Spy, Bless the Child, Arrow, Warcraft, and he also did the voice of Rocky in Night of the Living Dummy 3. Mr. Morton asked Lucy what she thought of the book.
Down.
But Lucy, Black Beauty is a classic.
It would have been better if the horse had two heads. And big old gnarly fangs.
Why don't you go pick another book?
Lucy is looking for another book, and her friend Erin asks her what she's getting. Erin was played by Christopher Tua, who's known for Family of Cops, Twice in a Lifetime, and Wild Card. Lucy says she's getting Frankenstein. They go to check the book out, and Mr. Mortman asks Lucy if she's sure because Frankenstein is a classic as well.
But this one's got a monster.
Wouldn't it be cool if there were real monsters?
Well, I'm not so sure, Aaron. Most people like to be frightened in movies or stories. Not in real life.
Lucy asks Erin if he ever noticed anything weird about Mr. Mortman, like his creepy beady little eyes and his sweaty hands. Erin said that when he gave her book back, it was all slimy.
Ugh.
Lucy then remembers she forgot her rollerblades at the library. Erin says he's got to get home. They say goodbye and Lucy runs back to the library. Lucy arrives at the library and notices the lights going off. Just then, a jump scare. She continues up the stairs and opens the door. I guess they forgot to lock the doors. Lucy is walking in the library and hears Mr. Mortman humming. She finds her rollerblades and begins to leave. She then hears Mr. Mortman talking, and she goes to see what he's doing. We see Mr. Mortman grabbing some crickets to feed his tarantulas.
It's dinner time, my furry friend. Oh, aren't you hungry? Munch, munch.
Mr. Mortman then grabs a handful for himself. Lucy then takes off running after seeing that. Lucy runs home to where her dad is making meatballs. He was played by Dan Lett, who is known for Murdoch Mysteries, The Strain, The Shape of Water, and X-Men Apocalypse. Lucy tells her parents she saw a monster.
Huh? Where? At the library.
Don't you say hi anymore?
Hi, Dad. There's a monster at the library.
Lucy, please.
What kind of monster?
Could you give us a hand here, please?
A big, slimy, disgusting one that eats bugs.
Oh, I hope this monster thing was just a phase you were going through.
Life is a phase I'm going through.
Well, could you go through it, please, after you've washed your hands and set the table?
Dad, this is no joke.
Larry, you're making them too big.
I happen to like big meatballs.
Later on, Lucy is on the phone with Aaron, telling him what she saw, and she says that everyone thinks she's making it up, and Aaron tells her sarcastically he wonders why. Lucy gets mad that Aaron doesn't believe her either. Aaron tells her to calm down. Lucy says he'll believe soon enough because she's going to prove it to him with her camera. The next day at the library, Mr. Mortman is asking Lucy about the Frankenstein book.
Do you believe in monsters?
Perhaps we all have a little monster in us, Lucy. Why don't you go pick another book while I tidy up?
Okay.
I'll see you tomorrow then.
Yeah, right. See ya.
Lucy is keeping an eye on Mr. Mortman and pretends to leave by opening and closing the door. The lights go off, and Lucy sees Mr. Mortman feeding his tarantulas again, which is the exact same footage as before. Lucy searches for her camera in her bag and grabs it and crawls closer to Mr. Mortman, just as he eats a tarantula. Lucy then snaps a picture of Mr. Mortman, and the flash pretty much gives her away. Mr. Mortman asks who's there, and Lucy runs away.
Keep running, little one. I love fast food. My mouth is watering.
Lucy is running through the library and runs into a dead end. Mr. Mortman knocks Lucy's camera off her hands and traps her.
You're just making me hungrier. Dinner is served.
Lucy grabs her camera and crawls through Mr. Mortman's legs, and he chases her again, but she manages to run out of the library. Lucy manages to run home, but no one else is there. She calls Aaron, who questions Lucy on how she got away. She thinks the flash blinded him, but she got her picture and her proof. Aaron tells Lucy that she's forgetting one thing, her library card, that it has her address on it. Mr. Mortman knows where she lives. Lucy says, so what? Aaron says, he's probably on his way to her house right now. Lucy says that's not funny. Aaron says, if he was her, he'd get out of there right now. Lucy then runs downstairs and opens the door to leave, but finds Mr. Mortman outside.
Good evening, Lucy. May I come in for a minute?
No. My parents aren't home right now. I mean, they'll be home any minute. I mean, in the bathroom. Mom, is Dad still cleaning his rifle?
It's okay, Lucy. It's really you that I've come to see. You left your backpack at the library. I have it right here. This is yours, isn't it?
Could you maybe just leave it on the doorstep? Please?
Wouldn't it be easier if you open the door and let me hand it to you? I'll just set it down here.
Thank you.
Oh, it's no trouble. It's on my way. I look forward to our next little chat.
Later on, Lucy's parents come home, and Lucy runs to them, telling them that Mr. Mortman was there, and tells them they have to get her film developed right away, that it proves he's a monster. Her mom tells Lucy to calm down. Lucy says he followed her home today. Her dad questioned why he would follow her home. Lucy says she forgot her book bag at the library, and he brought it over. Her mom cuts her off and tells Lucy that it was nice of him to drop it off, because he lives across town, and it wasn't on his way at all. Lucy says, "Come on, that time is wasting. The photo place is going to close." Her dad gives in and takes Lucy. Lucy gets her pictures developed, but Randy knocks them out of her hand, and all the photos fall to the ground. Their dad calls Randy to get in the car, and Lucy begins to pick them up from the floor.
You're quite the photographer.
Mr. Mortman, what are you doing here?
Have you been thinking about monsters again?
Mr. Mortman, thanks very much for bringing home Lucy's backpack today.
Oh, it was nothing. I was on my way.
Mr. Mortman, why don't you come over for dinner tomorrow night?
Lucy's been talking a great deal about you. It'd be nice to get to know you better.
Well, that would be lovely. Thank you. It's been so long since I've had a home-cooked meal.
Lucy is questioning her parents on why they don't believe he's a monster, because he's not in the pictures. That proves he's a monster, Lucy says. Lucy's mom says she doesn't care if he's a drooling werewolf, he's coming over for dinner. The doorbell then rings, and Mr. Mortman walks in and greets Lucy's mom and thanks her for the invite. Mr. Mortman then greets Lucy and Randy and asks if he will be joining his reading group next year.
Can I sleep on it?
Of course.
Mr. Mortman is admiring their house. Then Lucy's mom tells Lucy to offer Mr. Mortman a meatball. Mr. Mortman tastes it and says it's delicious. He then asks what's for dinner.
Well, it was going to be a surprise, but...
Since you asked, you are.
Excuse me, I thought you said...
That's right. You are...
Lucy's dad says that was a close call and tells Lucy and Randy they can never ever tell anyone that they are monsters. Lucy says they know that. Lucy's mom says they can't have other monsters in town either. And Lucy's dad says, you know why? And Lucy says because they might tell other people about them. And Randy says that they would be frightened and chase them away. Their dad says, or worse, that Mr. Mortman was the first monster to come around in 20 years. And then their mom says that's why it took them so long to believe Lucy. Their dad says when they get bigger, they're going to get their training fangs. And their mom says before long, Lucy and Randy will be able to transform just like them. Then Randy sees another monster out the window.
What are we gonna do?
Better let him in.
Hey, what's up?
Just finished dinner.
Oh, man. Talk about timing. Well, what's for dessert?
Well, it was going to be a surprise, but since you asked.
You like cherry pie?
Sure.
Pardon me.
And that concludes episode 4 of Goosebumps, and I really loved the twist ending. The story was well written and the acting was pretty good. I think the special effects were also done well and definitely holds up today. Let me know if you remember this episode and did you like it? Let me know what you thought, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.